Do you remember rewinding a movie by hand because the VCR gave up? Or blowing into a video game cartridge just to make it work? If you just smiled or nodded, then you don't belong to this new age generation. Today, we're taking a jolly walk down memory lane back to the days when Saturday morning cartoons were not to be missed rituals. Your phone was attached to the wall, and the internet made weird noises before letting you online. If any of that sounds familiar, buckle up. You're about to relive the good old days when life was a little slower, a lot simpler, and somehow way more fun. Blowing into NES cartridges to make them work. Almost everyone who grew up in that era remembers the struggle. Yes, you're excited to play Super Mario, but when you pop the cartridge in, nothing happens. What then do? You pull it out and blow into it like your life depends on it. Somehow, we all believed that a quick blast of air would magically fix the game. And guess what? Sometimes it actually did. It was like a secret gamer trick everyone knew without anyone teaching it. Kids today just tap a button on their sleek consoles and everything loads perfectly. But back then, if you didn't master the art of the cartridge blow, it just meant you wouldn't play. Getting film developed at the drugstore. Long before phone cameras and instant selfies became a thing and found their way into every home, taking pictures was a real adventure. You had to wait days, sometimes a whole week, to see if you even got a good shot. Can you imagine that? You would drop off your roll of film at the drugstore, get a little claim ticket, and then the wait began. Finally, you would return, rip open that envelope, and hope nobody blinked or had red eyes in every photo. It was like a tiny Christmas morning every time. And let's be honest, half the fun was flipping through the prints right there in the store. If you remember the smell of fresh photo paper and the suspense of waiting, yep, you're officially an old folk. Using a pencil to rewind a cassette tape. In those days, there was no skip or rewind button on our playlists. If your cassette tape got loose, you had to grab a pencil, stick it in the tiny hole, and spin it around like a little DJ. As a matter of fact, everyone had their own technique. From fast spinning to slow turning or carefully lining it up just right. It wasn't just music, it was a survival skill. And when a tape snapped, oh no, that was a real heartbreak. Kids today just tap their phones to pick a song. But back then, every mixtape came with a little bit of lot and a lot of pencil work. If you ever fixed your favorite tape this way, you're definitely from the golden days of music. Car phones the size of a brick. Before smartphones slipped into our pockets, car phones were giant, and I mean giants. They were so big it felt like you were calling NASA every time you made a call. Mounted right between the seats or stuffed in a giant bag, these phones needed their own seatbelt. No kidding, only the really fancy folks had them too, as pulling one out was basically a flex that you were living large. In those days, calls cost a fortune, and the reception was terrible. But none of that mattered. You were talking from a car. Another thing that you can't forget is trying not to get tangled in the cord while driving. What a way to witness the early days of mobile craze. Saturday morning cartoons being a big event. Once upon a time, Saturday mornings were pure magic. No alarms, no chores. Okay, chores will eventually come, but it will be much later. It was a period when you could look forward to plenty of serials and cartoons. You had to wake up early to catch your favorites like The Smurfs, Scooby-Doo, and Looney Tunes, because if you missed them, too bad. There were no reruns, no streaming, no second chances. Kids today have 24/7 cartoons on demand, but back then, Saturday morning was the event of the week. Pajamas, a big bowl of cereal, and 4 straight hours of animated awesomeness. If that sounds like a perfect morning to you, it's official. You grew up in one of the best cartoon eras ever. TVs with rabbit ear antennas. Getting a clear TV picture used to be like winning a prize. Those rabbit ears, yes, those 2 metal rods sticking out of your TV, had to be twisted and turned just right. Sometimes you had to stand in weird spots or even hold the antenna yourself just to keep the picture clear. A little tinfoil on top, that was high tech. Today, everything's HD and crystal clear. But back then, a fuzzy picture with static was just part of life. If you ever spent 5 minutes adjusting the antenna just to watch your favorite show, then you are old. Don't even think of denying it. Having to call the movie theater for showtimes. Want to know what time the movie starts? Better pick up the landline and call the theater. You would listen to a pre-recorded message, sometimes forever long as you wait to hear your movie and it's showtime. Well, if you missed it, you had to call back and listen all over again. There was no app to check, no website to browse, just patience and good listening skills. It sounds crazy now, but back then, it was totally normal. And honestly, finally hearing your movie's time felt like a mini victory. If you remember getting excited just to listen to that recorded voice say, "Showtimes for today are," then you're definitely part of the old demography. Listening to music on a Walkman. Many people today can't imagine a world without Spotify, playlists, and Bluetooth, but before all of that, we had the mighty Walkman. Clipping it to your belt made you feel like the coolest person around. Pop in a cassette tape, put on those foam-covered headphones, and boom, you had instant jam sessions anywhere you went. Of course, you had to flip the tape halfway through. And if you wanted to switch albums, you better carry a few extra cassettes in your backpack. There were no skipping songs with a tap either. You had to fast forward and guess where your favorite song started. If you ever danced down the street with a Walkman blasting, you know music just hit differently back then. Waiting weeks for mail order stuff from catalogs. Online shopping is fast, but mail order catalogs? That taught you patience. You would flip through thick catalogs, circle what you wanted, and beg your parents to send the order. Then came the hard part, waiting and waiting. Sometimes it took weeks, even months, for your package to finally show up. Checking the mailbox every day felt like a full-time job. But when that box finally arrived, pure happiness. It was like getting a present you almost forgot you ordered. If you remember tearing open a catalog and dreaming about the toys, gadgets, or clothes you might get, well, you definitely grew up in the golden age of slow but sweet surprises. Typing school papers on a typewriter. Long before computers took over, typing up your school paper meant serious work and serious noise. One wrong letter? Hit the backspace, but that didn't delete anything. You had to use correction tape or whiteout. And even then, it looked messy. Typing wasn't just about writing. It was about surviving until the end without making a million mistakes. That clack-clack-ding sound? It was the background music of every late-night homework session. If you've ever finished a 5-page paper and prayed it didn't need major fixing, kindly step out for your old-school badge of honor. Payphones on every street corner. If you ever needed to call home and you didn't have a quarter, then good luck. Payphones were everywhere, on street corners, at gas stations, and even inside the mall. However, if you step into that little glass booth, you would need to drop your coin and then hope the person picked up. No texting, no caller ID, no, I'll call you back. If you missed someone, you just missed them. In a nutshell, you have been around for some time if you ever memorized phone numbers and carried emergency change in your pocket. Floppy disks that actually flopped. Before the cloud or USB drives, we had floppy disks, and they actually flopped if you waved them around. These little plastic squares could barely hold a single photo by today's standards. But back then, they were high-tech magic. You'd save your school project, pop the disk into your backpack, and pray it didn't get bent or lost. Those disks were like precious cargo, even if you didn't own that magic disk. But remember your friend panicking because he forgot to save before pulling out the disk. Then you are not only old, you witnessed something truly phenomenal. Black and white TVs in the spare room. Color TVs were fancy, but the old black and white set still lived proudly in the spare room, or maybe even the kitchen. Yes, you had to twist the knobs to watch your favorite shows in glorious shades of gray because there were no remotes yet. Saturday night movies, game shows, family news hour, all in black, white, and of course many shades of fuzzy. If you ever sat on the floor squinting at a black and white screen while someone yelled at you for turning the knob so fast, then you've definitely got some classic TV memories. Pagers and beepers. These days, the closest you would come to experiencing a pager or beeper is in one of those old-time movies, especially medical series. Long before, everyone had a cell phone in their pocket. If you were important or just wanted to feel important, you had a pager or beeper. That little box would buzz or beep, showing a number you had to call back ASAP. There we go. It felt so high-tech at the time. Doctors, teenagers, and cool kids clipped them proudly to their belts. No texting, no emojis, just a simple number that said, "Call me." Then from there, you could run into the nearest payphone after your pager buzzed. Rental VHS tapes from Blockbuster. Friday nights weren't complete without a trip to Blockbuster. People would roam the aisles, trying to grab the last copy of the newest release before someone else did. Then they would head home with their big plastic case, pop the tape into the VCR, and pray the last person remembered to rewind it. If you ever spent half an hour arguing with your siblings over which movie to rent and then lost, congratulations. You lived through the era of movie nights when watching a film actually meant leaving the house first, using actual maps to get anywhere. Before GPS, there were two ways to find your way around. One, you ask someone and hope they knew. Or two, pull out a huge folded paper map that never, ever folded back the right way. Getting lost was practically part of the adventure. Your parents would unfold a map across the dashboard, squint at tiny street names, and still end up making a wrong turn. If you've ever been stuck on the side of the road while someone argued with a map, trust me, you are old. Being excited to buy a new Trapper Keeper. Back-to-school shopping wasn't really about pencils or notebooks.
Well, that's why I got him the all-new Me Trapper Keeper. These really cool Trapper folders let you organize your work.
It was all about getting the coolest Trapper Keeper. Bright colors, Velcro flaps, wild designs. It was like carrying a piece of artwork under your arm. Having a flashy Trapper Keeper practically made you a legend in your classroom. When MTV actually played music videos? Believe it or not, MTV once stood for Music Television, and they actually played music videos all day long. From Michael Jackson's Thriller to Madonna's Like a Virgin, it was non-stop entertainment. You didn't just listen to songs, you watched them. If you ever spent hours glued to the screen waiting for your favorite video to pop up and cheered when it finally did, then you are old. But heads up, you are a classic oldie. Rotary dial phones in the house. Making a call used to be a full-on workout. With rotary phones, you had to stick your finger in the little hole, spin it around, and wait for it to spin back before dialing the next number. And heaven help you if the number had lots of nines or zeros. It took forever and was always frustrating, especially if you needed to make an urgent call. You must also remember to slam down the heavy receiver after a fight with your sibling. Oh, what a time to be alive. Metal lunchboxes with cartoon characters. Forget boring brown bags. Lunch at school was a fashion show of metal lunchboxes. In a way, it can be compared to the Stanley boxes of the modern day. Whether it was Superman, Strawberry Shortcake, or He-Man, you had to have your favorite cartoon hero with you at lunchtime. There was even a bonus point if your lunchbox had matching thermoses inside. If you remember the satisfying clang of opening one up or using it as an impromptu shield during playground battles, you definitely had one of the most fabulous accessories of your childhood. Getting up to turn the TV channel by hand. Remote controls? Please, back in the day, you were the remote control. If you wanted to change the channel, you had to physically get off the couch, walk to the TV, and twist the giant dial. And with only a few channels, you probably ended up just picking whatever came next. If you remember grumbling every time your parents asked you to change the channel, then you are not alone. A lot of people did it. Not only that, you survived one of the purest tests of patience and endurance. Encyclopedias on the bookshelf instead of Google. Before the internet, if you needed to do a school project, you didn't just Google it. Nope, you headed straight for the giant set of encyclopedias sitting on the bookshelf. Each one weighed about 10 pounds, and flipping through pages was like a mini workout. If your family proudly displayed their encyclopedia set like a trophy in the living room, you definitely know what it's like to search for knowledge the old-fashioned way. Arcades packed with kids every weekend. Weekends were for heading to the arcade with a pocket full of quarters and big dreams. The blinking lights, the wild sounds, the competition to beat the high score. You have to agree it was pure magic. Whether it was Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, or Street Fighter, there was nothing more extraordinary than owning the leaderboard. In those days, nothing was more exciting than staying glued to an arcade machine with pockets full of crumpled tickets. Roller skating parties at the rink. Do you remember when having a birthday party at the roller rink was the utmost flex? Bright lights, disco balls, neon outfits, and the constant fear of wiping out on the floor. People weren't just skating, they were grooving to whatever pop hit was blasting through the speakers. Even today, memories of trying to skate backward, linking arms with friends, or just falling over and laughing incite wide smiles. Cereal box prizes that were actually good. Once upon a time, cereal boxes weren't just about the cereal. They were treasure chests. You would find actual prizes like mini toys, cool stickers, or even spy gadgets. Kids everywhere would dig halfway through the box before breakfast just to grab the prize first. Another thing that made that era unforgettable was the fight with siblings over who got the toy or picked cereal based only on what prize was inside. Long-distance calls being expensive. Making a long-distance phone call used to be a major decision. It was not unusual to hear parents shouting, "Make it quick, it's expensive," from the other room. Talking to grandma in another city felt like connecting with someone on the other side of the world. And during the short call, you remember calling cards, counting minutes like treasure, or dreading the phone bill after a long chat. Kids of nowadays will just never know what a struggle calling used to be. Collecting garbage pail kids cards. A lot of people will certainly remember how Pokemon and Fortnite ruled kid culture. However, before them, there were garbage pail kids. The weird, gross, hilarious trading cards that every kid just had to collect. With names like Atom Bomb and Leaky Lindsay, these cards made parents cringe and kids laugh until they cried. If you remember, what made them fun was swapping duplicates with friends at recess or sticking them on your school notebooks. Yeah, even though you weren't supposed to. Kids today think they are having all the fun, but older generations too were not exactly bored. Manual window cranks in cars. Today we have automatic buttons, but back in the day, rolling down your car window used to be a full arm workout. You had to grab the little handle and crank, crank, crank until you either cooled off or gave up halfway. And heaven forbid you were the one sitting in the back seat without air conditioning. But now, as an elder, you gotta remember racing your siblings to roll their window down first. It was work, but it was fun too. Home perms and giant cans of Aquanet hairspray. If you grew up in the 80s, chances are you either had a perm or knew someone who did. And the finishing touch? Half a can of Aquanet hairspray to freeze that giant crunchy hairdo into place. Back then, hair wasn't just a style, it was a way of life. Perhaps you have memories of your mom, sister, or even yourself smelling like some wheeled chemical just to achieve the perfect glam. Then you might just be old. When microwaves were a luxury item. Today, microwaves are so common that it's hard to imagine a kitchen without one. But way back, owning a microwave meant you were rich. It was a massive, clunky machine that seemed like something out of a sci-fi movie. Families would proudly show it off like a new car. If you remember treating the microwave like magic, watching popcorn pop through the window, or heating up your first TV dinner, then you deserve some flowers for seeing firsthand the evolution of kitchen tech. Which of these do you remember? And do you agree that you are indeed old? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe to this channel.